while plucking feathers from a swan song. A cobweb melts within a wound. While plucking feathers from a swan song, an incontinent is singing Scarpia. While plucking feathers from a swan.
Scott Walker was one of the Walker brothers, who were a 60s band from LA who moved to Britain. So Walker isn't actually his real surname, and he wasn't actually a brother of the other people in the Walker brothers. Scott had a solo career that started in the late 60s and was still going until his death in 2019. And over that time, he had 19 solo albums. And over the years, he started out as a kind of popular orchestra-backed singer and just became avant garde and experimental as time went on. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is Bish, Bosch, and it's the 14th and last album by Scott Walker as a solo album, and it's his final one before he died. And this was my first listen to this album. I had known that he got experimental later on. The things that I've reviewed from him before have been classified as chamber pop, which is kind of stuff with a bit of an orchestra in the background. It's kind of what I think of as easy listening. This is definitely not that. And it took me quite a long time to listen to it because it's 75 minutes long, and it's unusual and it's odd, and it's a weekend, and I didn't really want to subject my family to it too much. So I ended up listening, certainly the first time, in fits and starts until I managed to get through, then did some reading, and then listened a second time. So as I said, it's definitely the experimental stuff. I'm going to use the words odd, weird, unusual, those sorts of things. Description is one of those things that's not necessarily easy to describe, which is one of the reasons why I'm glad that I have moved from doing a blog of reviews to doing video reviews, because I put the two clips of music, one at the start, one at the end. And so you're going to get somewhat of the idea of what it's like. Throughout, it's got this kind of strangeness. There's odd noises and some musical notes. I don't know how many of the noises have been made using instruments. I think quite a considerable amount, but they're definitely not. It's stretching the idea of what actually you can call music quite a lot, to be honest. There's quite a lot of singing. He is a singer, and he's got this kind of fairly strident but quite tremulous voice that he sings with. He's definitely somebody who in the past has been able to blast it out, and he can still kind of sing quite, you can tell his singing is accurate and on the note, even when the backing doesn't match what he's singing. Where the ideas of his tunes, if you can call it that, come from, I'm not really sure. And then along with all that, there's some fairly bizarre lyrics. Okay, so it definitely, I feel like this description isn't great yet. I definitely describe it as soundscapes. It's quite barren at times. It's got a bleakness to it, even when it's quite busy. I mean, the first track starts with a very repetitive drum beat that's quite kind of deliberately annoying, I think, in some ways. Most of it isn't annoying, actually. I didn't find it that jarring, except it is definitely discordant, and it does use some fairly harsh sounds at times. There's bits of emptiness, and there's even bits of silence in there as well. The reverb is used quite a lot to give kind of this feeling of space. And it's, I'm going to use the word unusual again. It is definitely, some of the tracks are long. The longest track is over 21 minutes. The long tracks tend to keep moving on and keep changing quite a bit. It's not something that kind of settles into one thing and then just does that repetitively over and over. There are bits of repetition, but there's quite a lot moving on, so there's always something new to listen to in that sense. Some of the tracks are shorter, and the shorter ones tend to be more coherent in the kind of exploring one idea or one set of ideas. And it's, as I've said, it's all in the kind of area of definitely not pop. And I think some people might find it a challenging listen, and that's okay. If you don't like this kind of experimental stuff, I am not judging anybody who doesn't go to the extremes of music. So let's talk about lyrics. So it is sung, and there are lyrics. There's quite a lot of lyrics in here. Some of them make sense. Most of them are recognizable English words. There are occasional nonsense words being used. There's some of the phrases make sense. Some of them make less sense, but you can see how they're kind of built from something that maybe did make sense, and then swapping in some words to make it seem absurd. And absurdism is, it's got kind of absurdist look at life. Well, I don't really know what it's looking at. There is a certain amount of swearing. There is, but not a huge amount. There are some sexual references. There's quite a lot of references to genitalia in various ways. And there are phrases like, one of them that particularly struck me, I don't know why, was "Don't move, I want to forget you just as you are," which is obviously a play on "Don't move, I want to remember you just as you are," but it's swapping the word remember for forget. There's insults as well. There's quite a lot of those. I quite liked "If brains were rain, you would be a desert." So it's... I would say my reaction is that it's interesting and curious, especially the first time. So it made me laugh with surprise at times to the lyrics in that kind of way that it's not necessarily about humour, it's about surprise. Maybe it was intended to do that humorously. I think I kind of get it and what it's trying to do. I'm not sure, because if it was something else, then I don't get it, do I? I quite like it. I like it bits, not a huge amount. I think it's got novelty value. It doesn't mean it's twee in any way, but it's the value for being unusual and being able to appreciate its unusuality. I would say that I would recommend for people, if you like things a bit that are in this direction, it's something to listen to once. So maybe not, buying a copy, but streaming and having a listen, because it's curious and it's interesting. But I think the impact of the first time is where the biggest value of this is. That's what I think. I'd love to know what you think, especially if you're an absolute fan of this and you think I've missed some qualities that you think are absolutely obvious. Please do tell me about them. And that's it from me for now.
I've severed my reeking gonads, fed them to your shrunken face. Janus head, it said, will give good door. IXI, XVI,